Hello, welcome to season 2 of Wealth, the podcast with me, Joanne, your angsty influencer and your host. In this season, we're going to dive deeper into what wealth really means, looking at how, as a recovering anxious woman, I get through day to day, week to week, and I'm going to be sharing the tools, the magic, and the things that I do daily to help me get through. I would also love to hear more from you in this season. You can reach out to me on my socials, on my email. You can send me an email explaining your anxiety issues, whether you're recovering or going through some things right now. And if it resonates with you, I would love to have you on the show so we can share our stories because we're all together in this. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello, yes, I'm here. I know I've had 2 weeks off without permission. It wasn't a planned 2 weeks off. So I always do my recordings on Monday afternoons. So 2 weeks ago on the Monday, I had my first wedding dress fitting. So that was in the morning, very exciting. And because I've designed the dress and I've not actually, I've tried on the shape of it now, but it's not finished. So I don't even know myself. When people ask what's your dress like, I only have the chat GTP version of the dress. So I technically designed the dress. So I picked out some dresses that I liked and I just asked ChatGTP to put these dresses together to create one dress, and it did. Now, the dress that it created is gorgeous. However, it's not practical. So my dress lady also did have to explain, like, the dress what I tried on I already love. I love that I've gone for a different kind of material than what most wedding dresses are made out of as well. So, but the chat GTP picture, everything's sort of like in place on the woman. But in reality, if she did it exactly for like the picture, as I moved around, I'd be flashing things and the dress would be falling down, or I would need it super glued to my body. Oh, Ted's here. Hi, Ted. The dogs have had a bath, that's the other news. They're also silky and smooth. Ted's got this new thing. So Ted is the middle child, the one that if you're watching on YouTube now, you'll see him on my knee, the fluffy one, if you've got me on Instagram. But he's got this new neediness where if I'm sat at the breakfast bar, or sometimes I practice my sequence and I'm just standing up, obviously I don't bother to get my mat out. The dogs don't let me do anything on my yoga mat. So I'll just stand up and go through it in my head. And he's got this little that he's starting to do. And he just wants to be picked up all of the time. So he's here on my knee right now. Anyway, back to the life updates. So wedding dress and my hair. So I was growing it for the wedding, but I gave up. Now I've gone normal bob, my little French bob that I used to have, and then I grew it out, and then now it's back again, and I do much prefer it. I am just going to keep my hair short. I'm going to try and grow out the bangs for my wedding, so they're about cheek length, and I'll probably get my fringe straight back, the bangs straight back after I've got married. And I still don't know about wedding hair. I'm spending all of my time on Pinterest looking at wedding hair, short wedding hair, because I kind of like it messy, and there aren't too many messy haired brides. So what I need to do is wait for my veil and then try some styles with my veil and see what we're going with, because I love just blow dry, let it, as it is now, just blow dry, let it hang how it hangs, or a ponytail. But can I have a ponytail for my wedding? Does it need to be more special than a ponytail? Maybe if I get a nice bobble. But I am working with the girl that comes to do my hair anyway, so we'll come up with. So that was 1 week. And then the second week, I went for a CO2 fractional laser under eye treatment. So my eyes might look a bit dark today. Again, if you're listening to this, that doesn't matter. And I had the under eye and under brow, upper eye, I guess that's called, CO2 laser. Didn't hurt at all, smelt like burning flesh, burnt as I was driving home, and then I really swelled up that evening and the next day. I looked like I'd been punched in the face, but it's virtually nearly gone now. But yeah, I was there for another week, so that's why I missed 2 weeks of podcasts. And it's just a nice reminder as well that I know I say this all of the time, to be kind to yourself. There's another version of me that would have been really stressed and panicking that I hadn't done a podcast, and it's going to really affect me, and these bad things are going to happen because I say it's going to be out every week and I haven't done that. But I let that go. And I'm still learning the art of letting go, because it is an art, and we really do attach ourselves to these pressures that we put on ourselves. So I love doing my podcast, but it is something that I do for myself. And if you're like me, and I think it might come down to a little bit of my anxiety, that once we start to do something, we have to see it through. And whether that's willpower, sometimes that's a good thing, because when I start things and I, try to make changes in my life, I'm very good at sticking to it. Sorry, I just need to move back a little bit because Ted's trying to curl up. I'm very good at sticking to it, but then it can also be a little bit detrimental, whereas it might stress me out when I sort of stray from it. So I'm still learning there, but it is a reminder to you that it's okay to miss things sometimes and go back to it a couple of weeks later. The only person that's probably going to notice is you. Maybe some of you did notice. You can let me know if you did. But yeah, be kind to yourself. And that's what I want to talk about today. There's been a lot going on in the world, and I feel like over these last 2 weeks, and I wasn't going to do a podcast on the events that I've seen happening in the news, because if you think back, if you listened to I think it might have been season 1 of episode 2, where I was pulling back from the media, not the mainstream media, I don't watch the news, but from podcasts and things that I feel were bringing down my frequency, my vibration. And I was hyper focusing. Again, I don't know where this comes from with me, that I love going down a rabbit hole, and I love learning, and if there's something going on, I want to know all about it, and I want to go a little bit deeper than that, and maybe a little bit deeper than that. And that does happen. Obviously, the algorithm feeds into this. So we might watch a couple of videos on one thing, and then the next thing we know, we're 2 weeks in, and that's all we've watched. And it can be very difficult to snap away from that. So with that in mind, I've been really trying to pull away, really training my algorithm. I've been watching lots of Alan Watts and Joe Dispenza to get my algorithm showing me these more positive things, more information on this mothership that is on the way to the earth that no one in the mainstream media is talking about. But it's this huge, they're calling it, 3-eye atlas? I've heard it called different things, because most of the videos that I watch are those AI videos. So some people say 3-eye, some people say 3-1, some people say atlas, and some of the voices spell out atlas, so I don't actually know what it's called. I've only watched one video where there was an actual scientist. The rest are just, like I say, these AI. But there's this big mothership. They're not sure if it's a comet, and the reason they don't think it's a comet is because it's changed colour, it's changed trajectory, it's changed speed, all of these really fascinating things. So I've been trying to guide myself to that, because there's no harm in that. Although a couple of the videos I have watched have said that it's an alien race coming to attack us in November, but I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Anyway, I went right off on a tangent then. So yes, trying to support your own mindset by what you're feeding yourself with. So when I was trying to plan what I was going to talk about today, there was a few topics that I sort of researched. One of them was the money mindset, because that's been a big thing for me over the past few weeks, but I'm going to save that one. I also did have an email from one of you, so if you sent in the email asking about money mindset, it is coming. A couple of other people also emailed in, so thank you so much for emailing, just asking me how I am navigating, preparing for a wedding, and just life in general, diet, fitness, all of those things. So that is going to be a podcast also in the making, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Then I did have an email that I want to focus on today from one of you regarding the things I've just mentioned in the news, what's going on, and how we navigate. So I have the email here. Subject: advice on handling heavy news. Hi Joanne, I've been following your podcast for a while and I really love how real and grounding you are. Thank you so much. I wanted to reach out because I've been struggling lately with all the heavy news, like the Charlie Kirk story and the tragic bus incident involving the young girl in America. Every time I see headlines, I feel anxious and almost frozen, but I also don't want to ignore what's happening in the world. I was wondering if you could share some advice on how to navigate news like this without letting it spike anxiety. How do you stay grounded while being aware of what's happening? Thank you so much. And then I won't share the name. So thank you so much for writing in with that. And I totally get it. And it's exactly what I shared a few podcasts ago about protecting your own energy and your own vibration. But then also at the same time, not just closing the door on what's happening in the world, because some of these things, if you have an interest, then some of these things you do want to be aware of. Some people will not be bothered in the slightest. They wouldn't have even heard of those events because they are not. We all have our own likes and dislikes, and we all have our own, I'm not going to say it's a like, but we all have our own, it's an interest, it's just an interest, our own interest in certain aspects. So I'm guessing the person who wrote this in is also interested in the politics maybe, or what's going on in the world politically. Whereas I know my partner, he does not. He knew who Charlie Kirk was because he'd seen a few videos, but I was like, oh my God, exactly the same as the person that sent in the letter. Charlie Kirk's been shot, and really wanting to know what was going on and who did it and why. And straight away, because I do love conspiracy, and I don't actually think conspiracy theories are real. I think a lot of the conspiracies are it's just a story, and it's an idea, and it's people asking questions. But then my partner's very different, and he would say, tinfoil hat, and people are different. So some of you listening to this might think, oh yeah, I wasn't really bothered about that, but then there'd be something else within your life that has that same effect. So we can all be affected by, again, whatever our own interests are. If we were all interested in the same thing and all disliked the same things, the world would be a very boring place. There'd be no opinion, there'd be no conversation. But what I do think is happening in the world at the moment is, and I don't know if this is just younger, I don't know, because my circle, we very much appreciate each other's thoughts and feelings. And I feel like that's what I've grown up with. So if someone has a different idea than you, that's okay. That's their choice. It's okay to not think exactly the same. But there's a fine line at the moment between people who have different opinions and then it's turned into hate. So if you don't think the same way as them, or you think something different, then you are a bad person and you are wrong. And this is the way that I sort of see the Charlie Kirk situation as well. Obviously, just going back to the letter, how do we then not ourselves begin to get angry and upset by what actually happened? I could go down, and I very nearly did, of why people are doing this, and it's not fair, and it's left versus right. And I also think it is disgusting that this is something that we just scroll through on social media, and we've watched an actual human being get shot in the neck, which is something that I'd never want to see ever again, and I didn't want to see ever anyway. But then we've also got people celebrating that. Like, when did it become okay for other humans to celebrate another person who hasn't done, anything other than have a differing opinion? He hasn't killed anybody. He hasn't hurt anybody, being violent to anybody. He just thinks differently than some people. And instead of people going, do you know what, I don't think that way because I'm not Christian, or I am this, or, we all have our differences of opinion. Instead of just going, yeah, I didn't agree with some of the things that he said, but how awful that he's been shot, and his wife is a widow at 31 and now he's got 2 children who don't have a father. but instead there was a celebration of somebody losing their life. And that is something which I agree there, but how do we stop ourselves? And how did I stop myself from spiraling here? If this episode is bringing you a little bit more wealth, please don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. This allows other people, other women who need to hear these stories, find me. And again, if you have a story to share, please reach out to me on my email, joannewealth@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on my Instagram, joanne_wealth. I would love to have you on the show, or you can just type up and stay anonymous so we can share these stories with each other. Now let's get on with today's episode. What I want to sort of iterate is that we can stay informed, and this is something that I'm working on. We can stay informed but without being consumed. So what I've tried to do in this situation is, maybe I've just read the headlines. There's lots of videos that I haven't clicked on because I don't want to, the situation happened. I don't agree with the situation. I don't agree with how people reacted to the situation. But the only thing that I can do is send prayers out to his family, is to reflect for myself on the world, and then continue with my own world, because first of all, it's not right now directly affecting me, and I don't want to lower my vibrational energy. So sending out prayers, sending out those wishes, supporting if you feel like you need to support his family in any way, and then not allowing yourself to be consumed, not clicking on the videos, taking some time off social media if you need to, so that it clears out your algorithm. I think 48 hours starts to clear out your algorithm. I don't go on my social media at the weekends, and it does really sort of give you that little bit of a shift. And exactly the same for the young girl. Again, a story that really upset me. And again, we shouldn't be watching a young girl be stabbed, how she was stabbed in such a public place, on just holding it in our hands. And I truly am with the person who emailed in that was also a difficult one, because your initial reaction is anger. How can this happen? How can someone so innocent, she just finished her day of work at the pizza place and sat on the bus and wasn't doing anything to anyone. She was just scrolling through her phone, listening to music. But again, not allowing yourself to be consumed with that, because when we start to consume, we then start to live in fear. We need to let that go. Send out your wishes, send out your prayers. If you pray, now praying doesn't have to be to God. If you don't, I know a lot of people don't believe in a God as such. Maybe you hold Christian values, so you speak to somebody, maybe it's the universe, goddess, there's lots of people, or just a higher self. For me, I do have Christian values, but I don't necessarily pray to God. When I'm praying, I imagine that I'm sending out my energy to whoever it is that I am praying for. And this is another thing as well, that I've actually made a reel about this, and I don't know if this will also help you, that people always, I would say just send your loving energy to them, send energy to them, because first of all, it helps you to raise your energy, and second of all, it actually works. Now, people will say like, oh, that's woo-woo, you can't do that. Now, you're listening or watching this podcast. I recorded this in my boudoir, uploaded it to the internet, however that works, and you're listening to it maybe in your headphones, watching it on TV, listening to it in your car, and then you have people trying to tell you that sending energy doesn't exist. Like, we're literally doing it right now, and everything has its own energy and its own vibration, and it's taken a human with their own energy and vibration to create this system that we're communicating with now. So I really find it difficult not to believe that when I'm sending out my loving energy and prayers of safety and just prayers of love to people who I think need it, it's not going to reach them, because it will. It's an energy. Like, how else does everything else work? And I'm not a scientist. There's probably, maybe, I don't think there's any scientists listening to this, but obviously there's a science behind the internet, and we send the text messages and watching TV and all of those things. And there's also a science behind our energy. And you know that when you walk into a room and it's low energy, that'll affect you. And you know when you walk into a party and it's high energy, you're going to feel high yourself. So sending out your energy, and it really does help. Just sit, picture the girl, picture the family, send out that love. And the same for Charlie Kirk as well. Just sending out your prayers and taking that time away so you don't become all consumed by it. And I'm holding my hands up here that I've been guilty of this. And like I said in the very first episode, I had to pull back and think, right, am I affecting my own manifestations here because I'm getting too wrapped up in what's going on in the world? I think I'm doing the right thing by not watching the mainstream news, but then I'm going down all of these rabbit holes. So I've really pulled back, and I'm actually quite proud of myself, little pat on the back, that I haven't gone too deep and allowed these events over the recent weeks to really affect me and not be too consumed by it. And I would also say as well to allow yourself to process the emotions. Just writing that email to me was a way of processing the emotions. Speak to your friends, speak to family, someone that is not going to push that fear though. So don't speak to your friend who you know is really angry about the situation. Speak to your friend who maybe doesn't even know who Charlie Kirk is. That's why I'm so lucky to have a partner who's very different than me, because I can be guilty, and I know I've just said it, of he'll come in from work and I've watched something during the day and I'm very passionate and things, I just want everyone to be happy in the world, and I want everyone to be able to live their lives without being told, without going too political, the government's control. And I just think we're not here to be controlled and living our life in a way that people are telling us we have to because they are somehow in charge. I'm not explaining this very well. But I sort of get really passionate about something like, they can't do that, that's not right. And he comes home, and because it's not that he doesn't care, it's just not on his vibration. And he really reminds me that doesn't directly affect you. What can you do now? So I'll go for a walk, do some yoga, play with the dogs, read my book, turn off YouTube. And it's just a nice reminder. So finding that person in your life that you can speak to, that is going to go, what happened? So they allow you to tell them what's happened, and they would say, oh, that's really sad, and remind you that, there's you can only do what you can do where you are. And it's really a nice reminder that we're not controlled by everything that we see, and we don't need to be consumed by all that we see. You choose what you consume. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I said consume a lot of times there. All of that being said as well, just a reminder that it is okay when you see these when you see the headlines, to feel something. And this is just it's you being human. And I would not argue that I would like to question or learn more about the people who celebrate when they see these disgusting things happening in the world. No matter what the headline is or who it's happened to, that how can we distinguish between one human and another, and why is it okay for one human to be killed so publicly and another not to be? And it is normal to have those confusions, and I'd say that is human, that is empathy, that is sympathy. And I don't know what's happened with other people who seem to have lost that, but again, I'm not going to let that consume me. They have their thoughts, they have their feelings, they have their opinions. I may not agree with them, and I may also think that what's happened to the human race if that we're celebrating that now. But then I come back to what I can do. I can send out love and prayers. I can care for, what's happening to other people. I can look after myself and my family and the people around me and make sure that they know that they are loved. And that's what you can also do as well. This is what also helps me to stay grounded, that just pulling yourself away. I've really tried, I think now maybe I'm on week 6, maybe a little bit less. So when I can in the mornings, I've been taking myself outside and going to do yoga on the grass across the street. Because like I said at the very beginning, the dogs don't let me practice yoga in the house. I can't roll my yoga mat out. They just want to be all over me, and that's lovely, but I do want to practice yoga. And I really think that's also helping me to stay grounded. So my new morning routine, I get up, I walk the dogs, bring the dog straight in, grab my phone and grab my water, grab my yoga mat, go across the street and practice yoga. Before, I don't look at social media, I haven't checked my WhatsApps. I maybe either practice and just do my own flow, or I'll quickly download one from YouTube, but that's about it as far as the social media goes. And that's also really helped me to start the day, because again, I was falling into a bad habit, especially in the summer, because it's so hot. In the winter, I'll go outside with my coffee and do the, grounding and take some time. But in the summer, being indoors, very hot, and I didn't even think to go across the street early in the morning. It just occurred to me one day to go across the street. I obviously needed it that day, and I was like, oh my God, I've not done this in the whole summer, because it's actually okay if I get there at 8 o'clock. It's not too hot. Anyway, I've just gone off a tangent there. But yes, so I was in the bad habit of coming downstairs, making my breakfast, having my coffee, sitting and watching whatever was unfolding from the day before I'd even had time to wake up. And I made the switch years ago from not putting the news on, but then I'd switch the news for podcasts, and that also then started to become an issue. So now it's nothing. And on the mornings, I don't have time to go and do yoga. I'm listening to Alan Watts is my favourite, or Joe Dispenza, but I like Alan Watts. I like his accent. He's got a very RP English accent, so I like listening to him. So find someone that you like listening to, words of wisdom that just make you think. There's one other thing that I've done, and I don't know if I've mentioned this yet in a podcast, but I stopped drinking coffee, and now I switched to decaf. And I've also noticed that I haven't been anxious since I stopped drinking coffee. So I think caffeine in the morning was also a no for me. I didn't actually realise until why did I do this? I didn't have a plan to switch to decaf. Oh, that's it. So I had a random twitch in my leg before I went home in the summer, and it was really annoying. It was just twitching when I was in bed. Now I think it was just overuse, because at times when I started doing a little bit more HIIT and weightlifting, but it was annoying me. So of course I asked Dr. ChatGTP, and ChatGTP said it could be one of a few things. Because I changed my milk after my cholesterol blood test, it could be just a shift in my diet. So I started to take calcium, and it also said caffeine, but I was only having 1 cup a day. But because the twitch was so annoying, I switched to decaf. So I started drinking decaf when I went home. So I'd ordered my Tesco shop to my mum's and put decaf coffee in there. Didn't notice a difference with the taste. It's fine. So I've stuck to decaf. Now my twitch has gone, and so that could be either or, the calcium or the decaf, but I also haven't woken up anxious. Now I wasn't waking up in the past when I was having my anxious era. I would wake up with anxiety in the morning. Anyway, over the past few years, that narrowed down to maybe once or twice a week. But I would get up, I would meditate, and I'd do the things, and I would ease the anxiety. That hasn't happened. So I'm wondering if for me there's a correlation there. So maybe a little experiment that you can do for yourselves if you do struggle with anxiety, or you see these things on the news and you're drinking your coffee and we're consuming all of this. We are what we consume. See if you can cut out that coffee. I really do hope that I'm going to send out my energy to everyone now listening to this, that you are able to control what you consume and don't let what you consume put fear into you. You are allowed to stay informed. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying never watch the news, don't listen to your podcast, because I do. But it's the way that we then deal with what we're hearing and what we're seeing, and allowing ourselves to be informed without allowing ourselves to spiral and go down our anxiety rabbit hole. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back next week with the money magic episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I just want to end by reminding you that wealth really isn't about having money in the bank. It's about feeling at home in your mind, your body, and your soul. And don't forget, if you do have your own story to share, you can email me, joannewealth@gmail.com. You can reach out to me on Instagram, joanne_wealth. I'd love to have you on the show, or just share your story with me and I will share it to the other women that need to hear. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Every single one of those means the world to me. Before I forget, podcast goes live every single Friday on your favourite podcast streaming website and over on YouTube if you prefer to watch. And every Wednesday on YouTube you'll find my Wealth Live vlog, where I just share my day to day. So if you're nosy like me and you want to know how I navigate through life, that's where you want to be on Wednesdays.